Bring in Martha MacCallum, anchor of the story. Martha, my heart just skipped a beat because that video we've been showing of that baby that was lifted up and given over into the hands of U.S. forces. I mean, it gets you every time you see it. And we have now, from Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon, the U.S. Marine has been identified in that video who helped lift that baby to safety over the airport wall. Just getting the new details of that. I can confirm this is attributed to a major stim stinger. I can confirm that uniformed service member depicted in the video is a Marine with the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit. The baby seen in the video was taken to a medical treatment facility on site and cared for by medical professionals. Martha, God bless that Marine.
God bless him is right. You know, when you see that moment that baby is going to be in safe hands. And when you think about the moment that a mother or a family member passes off a child because the only thing that can help them or perhaps keep them alive is to give them away. I just want everyone to think about that just for a moment here, because just picture your own children, right? And imagine that the only recourse you had was to pass them to a stranger. That stranger's from the United States. So we know that this baby will be taken care of. We pray that this family will be reunited. And the other thing that I want to say about that, Sandra and Trace, is that I think about the reunification of families, and I look at the way that this administration has handled the southern border. And they claim that they are doing what is compassionate, that they are not separating these families, okay? And that's one argument to be made. These families are being separated now. These families have family members who fought alongside us for a common goal of national security. National security and protection of the country is the #1 mission of the President of the United States of America. So now you have people who gave everything, risked everything in order to do that with us. I understand that there's a movement to get out of Afghanistan, and I think a lot of people are behind that. Let's do it properly. Let's treat the people who helped us properly, and let's show the rest of the world that we can do this. It is shameful, really, you know, to see these other countries pulling off some rescue missions outside of the gates of the airport, and we are not. And I can only imagine what the individuals who are in our special forces are thinking right now. That they want to be sent in, that they want to be able to carry out the same sort of task, and they need to have that. They need to have those directives from the top. So we're about to hear from the president moments away, obviously.
Yeah, we are. But we just want to point out that Semper Fi was the last thing that tagline said when they said that baby was carried away to medical authorities. We just played the soundbite with General Keane, Martha, earlier about an interpreter who's in Afghanistan, and you know he's not worried about it. He's worried about his 5 kids. He's got 5 children, and you would think there's a lot of people in Afghanistan right now that if they saw Marines there, they would hand their children to these Marines and then go back and take their own chances. But that's kind of the atmosphere that we're talking about. And when the general says again and again, we can't leave these Americans behind and we cannot leave our Afghan partners behind, that could take months, but apparently he believes it's well worth it.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people in Afghanistan have been filling out the paperwork for quite some time. And that's the other question here. The question isn't get out or stay in. I mean, that's a strategic question, of course. But the question is, how are we handling this? And what is the rest of the world? I think about President Biden at the G7 saying, you know, gee, I was just greeted with, you know, open arms by the leaders of the UK and France and Germany because they are so glad that the United States is back. That we are back to the table, that we are back to talking to our allies and all of that. And I just keep thinking, A, there were no phone calls initially. Apparently, there was some phone tag going on with Boris Johnson, excuse me, in London because he wanted to know what the heck was going on. So the lack of coordination with our partners, you know, actions speak much louder than words, okay? We've heard a lot of words about unity and about bringing the country together and about being, you know, unified on the world stage with our allies. These are our allies. These people are our allies in Afghanistan, so let's see how we treat them. We also and this is just, you know, these are facts. This is what has happened. We look at Joe Biden's past. We know that he has shied away from similar circumstances, right? With the South Vietnamese, there's accounts in a book by Richard Holbrooke that he did not want to worry about getting those partners out then, really felt that it was an America First moment. and that he wasn't worried about getting our partners out in South Vietnam, and we saw what happened with the collapse there. There's also the moment of the bin Laden raid, right? And the decision that was made, and President Obama made the decision to go ahead, to be bold and brave in a very, very difficult moment. That's what leaders do. So you wonder what President Biden is thinking now. Perhaps he's about to walk out there and announce that we are going to conduct a mission, that we're going to lock down other areas, we're going to go outside the airport, we're going to make sure we get these people home and do the right thing by them. But I would also say, with regard to what General Keane just said moments ago, my guess is that at the top of this, you're going to hear what a great job they're doing, how many thousands of people have gotten out, and you're going to hear that the temporary pause that we saw of for 8 hours of nobody getting out was because there's a backlog in Qatar, which is at this point the only country that's helping us to get people out, although we have asked other countries to be helpful. And, you know, the Putin story, apparently he shut down that option about some of the bases in Tajikistan and nearby. So they're in a tough position at the White House. We all hope that things are going to turn around and that all these people are going to get out safely. As Americans, we all hope that we get our arms around this and quickly and prove that we can perform and we can execute this in a way that reflects the values and what we expect.
And work with the international community and our allies.
There's no reason why we can't pull this off.
Some sort of detailed strategy. There's one thing I certainly get when I talk to General Keane about this, Martha, and I know we all hear it from him as well. There's one thing with Afghanistan, it is complicated. When you talk about solutions, when you talk about resolving this chaos and this mess, but there has been such awkward messaging coming from the military leaders, coming from the White House, coming from the Pentagon, from our national security advisor. I mean, that's been unnecessarily complicated. Why can't they get the messaging straight as we fight this chaos?
You know, I think just on a human level, you can look at the folks that are standing at the podium and even at the military leadership the other day, and they appear to be a bit set back by all of this. I think that they have all admitted that these cities and especially Kabul fell a lot faster than they thought. And we understand that sometimes things play out in a way that no one anticipates. And we were also told that there were contingency plans if indeed that would happen. We also know now that back in July, according to the State Department, there were a lot of warnings that Kabul could fall a lot more quickly than anyone was anticipating. So that's, I think, is the question. You know, you want to see leadership from the very top. You want to see confidence in the way this is carried out. You want to see our great military performing the duties that they have trained to do. And as General Keane has said, they can pull off these missions outside of the airport and get people out and register pickup points. Obviously, there is risk involved in that. There is risk involved in that. And if that's the way they go, we pray and hope that it goes smoothly. But it is the kind of mission that we do expect to see carried out. We know that is exactly the type of mission that a lot of these teams train for. Yeah, we anticipate the president is going to come out any minute now and speak, but I want to kind of rewind the clock, if I can, Martha, back to Monday, because as of last Monday morning, amid all the chaos, the only thing that was on President Biden's schedule was the daily briefing. Now, clearly, he did come out later in the day and speak, but it makes you wonder if he's reacting instead of being proactive. Is he reacting to the pressure? He's coming out today to speak, but there's this idea that instead of going forward and saying we are going to guide the American people through this step by step, they're kind of waiting to see what the pressure is and what the polling is. You know, I think it'll be interesting to see the president's tone here. We saw his tone with George Stephanopoulos yesterday morning. He seems to feel like this is going pretty much as expected. He said, you know, we knew that it would be chaotic. Chaos is inevitable in pulling out. And that may be true to a certain extent. But there's a lot here in terms of Bagram Air Base and some of the preparations for this, and perhaps getting people out, you know, in a somewhat under the radar way over the course of the last, 4, 5, 6 weeks. What could have been done there? You know, but he seems overall that the tone he's chosen so far is to say, look, this is what the American people want. They want to leave Afghanistan. I promised them that we would. The chaos that we're seeing is inevitable, and we're going to get through this. And they hope to move on. They hope to talk about something else. I think they'd rather talk about COVID at this point, given what's been on the president's schedule so far this week. Obviously a big story, but one that they would rather focus on at the moment, it seems. Martha MacCallum, thank you. You're going to stand by.